Dallas has trailed for an absurd 164 minutes of game time at home this season. That's the most time trailing by any team through their first 3 home games of a season dating back to the merger in 1970.
How in the name of Thomas Wade Landry does Mike McCarthy still have a job?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the video that you've all been waiting for that I definitely was not intentionally procrastinating on is officially here. The Dallas Cowboys are a complete mess. They just played their worst game in a very, very, very long time, since the Jerry Jones era began. And quite frankly, it was embarrassing to watch. Everything felt terrible about this team before week 6, but now they look simply unfixable. I wish I could say that it doesn't make sense, but to be honest, it kind of does. Changes need to be made, and with the team going into a bye, they need to be made now. So before we get to the content, we are less than 40,000 subscribers away from 1 million subscribers. So make sure you subscribe and turn on our notifications to help us reach that goal. And now that we get all of that out of the way, work! We made $500 on prize picks this past Sunday, and fortunately, a lot of you guys tailed my picks on Instagram and Snapchat, and you guys let me know in my DMs. One of you even made $1,000 from my picks. Prize picks is giving us another free square, meaning we only need to get 1 pick correct in order to 3x our money. All Anthony Edwards needs to do on opening night is score 1 point. Fortunately, we've been on a crazy streak, and if you haven't played prize picks, download the app or click in the link in the description down below and use my promo code Mikerophone to get $100 when you make an entry of $5 or more. Then follow me on Instagram at @theflightmike or on Snapchat to get my picks for free. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? It seems like Dan Campbell really wanted to get revenge on the Dallas Cowboys for how things went down last year. You know, when the Detroit Lions had a BS penalty called on them for having an ineligible receiver, which resulted in the Dallas Cowboys winning against them last year. Ironically, they tried to troll the Cowboys by doing the same thing this year, but it didn't really succeed either. But regardless, the Detroit Lions just embarrassed the Cowboys more than they've ever been in the Mike McCarthy era or in the Jerry Jones era, and I didn't think it could get any worse than week 2 against the New Orleans Saints, but somehow it did. At the time, I felt like the New Orleans Saints were just a really good team that were on the up and up, but the New Orleans Saints haven't gotten a single victory since destroying the Dallas Cowboys. And not only did Detroit destroy Dallas 47-9, but Dan Campbell was literally toying with the Cowboys the entire game. David Montgomery ran through the Dallas front 7. Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown both scored with ease, and Brian Branch even had 2 interceptions. Every single Lion was tearing the Dallas Cowboys a brand new asshole. Their offense was unstoppable. They were shutting down Dak Prescott each and every drive. But the worst part about this game is that Dallas was so bad that the Lions ran 4 different trick plays during the game in the most disrespectful way possible. This was so embarrassing that a Cowboys fan went viral for vomiting in the middle of the game, and a Lions fan was caught grittying around them. Now, I'm not taking any shortcuts around this. I am making sure I take all the salt in the world and rubbing it all over my wounds and the wounds of Dallas Cowboy fans, because we really need to discuss how terrible they were in this game. In the second quarter, Detroit ran a flea flicker to Sam Laporta, which makes sense because they were only up 7 and it worked to perfection, so I can't fault them for that. But where it started to get disrespectful is when they tried to throw a touchdown to Taylor Decker, their left tackle, when they were already up 25 points in the third quarter. And then later on in the quarter, Detroit ran a designed hook and ladder to Penei Sewell of all people. They even let backup tackle Dan Skipper, who controversially didn't report as eligible in the Cowboys and Lions matchup last year, to run a route in garbage time just for fun. They walked all over Dallas, and it was insane to watch. Dallas's top scorer in that game was none other than Brandon Aubrey. I talked about this in my last video about the Cowboys, but Dallas was literally undefeated at home last year. And then out of nowhere, Jordan Love and the Packers came to town and knocked the Dallas Cowboys out of the playoffs, the first 7th seed to do so. The Cowboys would have had home field against each and every team except the San Francisco 49ers if if they won that game. And it seems like ever since that game, something completely shifted in AT&T Stadium. In their last 4 home games dating back to the Green Bay game, the Cowboys have allowed a ridiculous 167 points. That's 41.8 points per game, which is the most in 4 straight home games since the Houston Oilers let up 176 in a 4-game span from 1972 to 1973. They don't even exist anymore. And the craziest part about this is Dallas was known for their defense. I know there's a bunch of us that may have even taken the Cowboys defense a little bit too early in fantasy football, primarily because they were so good in the previous 3 years. So how do you go from being completely unstoppable at home to being the worst home team in 50 plus years? So at this point, I think we all accept that the Cowboys are hilariously bad. And it's even worse because Jerry Jones isn't really instilling any hope in Cowboy fans. I mean, this is the guy that said we're going all in the offseason.
All in. All in, all in. We're all in with these young guys coming up. We're all in with knowing that you have to go.
I mean, the old man has become an absolute homer who refuses to help the team at all. He's an okay owner, but he's such a bad general manager. I mean, this is a guy that literally destroyed the Cowboys dynasty of the 90s. The Cowboys could have been the equivalent of the New England Patriots, and they could have easily had a run that went into the mid-2000s if it wasn't for Jerry Jones meddling around. I will admit the Cowboys have always been incredible whenever it comes to the draft, but they've also been terrible whenever it comes to extending their players and adding new players in free agency, or just making trades for that matter. I mean, the latest example is, and Jerry Jones is getting a lot of flack for this, he refused to make a move for Derrick Henry in the offseason because he didn't think the team could afford him. When Derrick Henry literally wanted to play in Dallas, he traded Amari Cooper in his prime for a 5th round pick, while Cleveland traded him the other day for a 3rd round pick in his age 30 season. But I will admit, a huge reason why the Browns got a better pick for Amari Cooper is because they ate practically all of his salary when they traded him to the Bills, so it made him a lot more valuable, whereas the Cowboys dumped his salary on the Cleveland Browns because it was an off-season trade. So I guess we could let that slide, even though it kind of stings. And most of all, he refuses to make any significant changes to his coaching staff. And I've been saying this for quite some time. It's very clear that the Mike McCarthy era needs to end. Listen to what Jerry Jones had to say about a coaching change after the Lions game.
Oh, I haven't even considered that. I'm not considering that. Just so you're clear, I'm not considering that.
But you've done it once before.
I wouldn't be a hypothetical in that matter. Do you think I'm an idiot?
It's really interesting because Jerry Jones is getting so defensive about the Dallas Cowboys because he thinks he knows what he's doing when it's so obvious that he doesn't. He's had coaching issues ever since he let Jimmy Johnson go away. Whether you're going all the way back to Barry Switzer, who lucked into another Super Bowl because he inherited a remarkable team, to the Dave Campo era, which was the first head coach I've ever recognized with the Dallas Cowboys in my youth, to try to swing for the fences with Bill Parcells, and of course, Wade Phillips, Jason Garrett, and now Mike McCarthy. It was clear that Jason Garrett needed to go years before he was finally let go, and that was only because his contract expired. And the same thing is happening this season with McCarthy's contract expiring at the end of the season. But if Jones was smart, he'd fire McCarthy now so that his team can have a real chance at success. But you heard the man, he's not considering a coaching change. So I guess we'll be watching this team go home in January once again, if we even make it there.
Shefty, I know that Jerry has basically said, hey, I'm not going to entertain a coaching change. We have who we want. But if you look at the Cowboys' schedule, it doesn't exactly get much easier from here on out.
He just hasn't made in-season coaching moves. He's been patient, if not more patient than just about any owner in the NFL. So that has not been his history.
Well, let's say you're one of the individuals that believe Mike McCarthy isn't the problem. After all, the Cowboys have had a great record each and every season during the Mike McCarthy era. Then you could simply point the blame finger at the construction of this roster. The Cowboys have virtually no running game, and they for some reason thought a washed Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle, and Dalvin Cook, who is still on the practice squad, I believe, would be enough to get the Cowboys' run game going, but it hasn't. The Cowboys' defense got significantly weaker. On top of this, they overpaid to keep Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb on the roster because they took their sweet time in negotiating those contracts. They had no leverage in the Dak Prescott contract negotiation either, primarily because, well, his contract was backloaded, meaning that if the Cowboys didn't extend Dak, then he would walk away and still count against the Dallas Cowboys salary cap. I've said this in the very beginning of the season because it was so obvious that the Cowboys were simply not a good team. They only got worse on paper over the past offseason, whether it's key losses in the form of Dorrance Armstrong, Tyler Biadasz, Stephon Gilmore, Dan Quinn, Tyron Smith, Dante Fowler, Neville Gallimore, and they didn't really do much to fill in those voids. I mean, don't get me wrong, they drafted Tyler Guyton in order to fill the void that Tyron Smith left behind, and they also signed Eric Kendricks primarily because he had familiarity in Mike Zimmer's defenses. I don't know if they knew Mike Zimmer was going to be their defensive coordinator from all the way back then, because they obviously signed Kendricks before, but you guys get my point. I've been saying this since March. I think the only thing that could save Jerry Jones's is if he lets Mike McCarthy walk at the end of the season and hired Bill Belichick and kept Bill Belichick in a head coaching role. The Cowboys have the best odds of being Belichick's next team if he were to come out of retirement. So there is a good chance that he's the individual that replaces Mike McCarthy. There have literally been rumors about Belichick coaching Dallas all season, and now he's even making comments on the Cowboys season so far, saying that it certainly looks like a tough situation in Dallas and that there's a long way to go, but something's gonna have to start happening fast. I don't know if it's the fact that I wish I had a head coach that I could have confidence in, a head coach that knew situational football, a head coach that was notorious for his defenses, but I have full faith that Bill Belichick would be able to turn the Dallas Cowboys around. But the problem is he was the head coach and acting GM in his time with the Patriots, so there would probably be a huge power struggle between him and Jerry. But I mean, Belichick is the greatest coach of our generation. Surely he has a lot more pull than somebody like Mike McCarthy does. At least I would hope so, because Jerry is doing absolutely nothing. He's already made it known that he won't be active at the trade deadline, which is absolutely ridiculous, and it shows exactly how stubborn he is. The Jets and the Bills both noticed that they were missing something, and they went out and traded for elite wide receivers on a random Tuesday weeks before the deadline. Dallas has plenty of holes, and we all see that, but Jerry is somehow content with the team that he's built, and he refuses to do anything to help it get better. It's a loser mindset. He also refuses to speak on why he hasn't made any significant moves roster-wise or coaching staff-wise, and is even blatantly disrespecting radio personalities for asking him and challenging him to begin with.
This is not your job. Your job isn't to let me go over all the reasons that I did something and I'm sorry that I did it. That's not your job. Or I'll get somebody else to ask these questions, man.
Jerry, we're trying to figure out why the team is.
I'm not kidding.
I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. The guy is just doing his job, and to be honest, he is asking Jerry what all Cowboy fans want to know. And you just attack him because he asks you a question that you're clearly insecure to answer and you don't know the answer to.
I detest, I despise someone that will prey on the weak. And because Jerry Jones is in an advantageous situation, because he has the power in this situation, he would actually say that publicly. That tells me a lot about a man.
It sucks. I mean, I came into this season expecting a 7-10-ish like season from the Cowboys because we clearly took a huge step back, both on the football field and in terms of coaching. We have a very one-dimensional offense that is fully dependent on Dak Prescott dropping back way too often throughout the game, and he's never been good at that throughout his career. Our biggest offseason move was Ezekiel Elliott, who's practically a waste of a down, averaging 3 yards per carry. CeeDee Lamb is getting double teamed as much as possible because there's nobody that can take the slack off of him, and the defense is basically unwatchable at this point. These are the same Cowboys who had a top 5 defense last year, and now they have the 3rd worst after this past Sunday. Their offense isn't much better either. Yes, the defense let up 47 points on trick plays and dominant football, but we can't gloss over the fact that the offense only put up 9. I mean, look at this play for instance. Luke Schoonmaker got jammed at the line so badly that he ended up right in Jalen Brooks' path. On top of that, Dak threw multiple bad interceptions, and the run game was a complete no factor, as it has been all season. They're literally in the bottom of the league in both rush yards per game and rush yards per attempt. Meanwhile, Derrick Henry has double the rush yards that Zeke and Rico Dowdle have combined. what could have been. Dallas is going into their bye week, and they better be putting in even more work than usual to fix every problem they have if they even want an opportunity at the playoffs, because the schedule from here on out is rough. As soon as they're off their bye, they face off against the reigning NFC champion 49ers, then play the Falcons, then the Eagles and Texans back-to-back in Arlington. And then after that gauntlet, they get to go play the best team in the NFC East, which I certainly did not have on my bingo card, but it's here, the Washington Commanders. Usually playing the Commanders is a good thing, but not this year. With the offense that Cliff Kingsbury has built and what Jaden Daniels is doing over there, they get the Giants, Bengals, and Panthers after that. But if Dallas can't at least go 500 in those 5 gauntlet games after the bye, there's no chance this team even sniffs January football. At this point though, that wouldn't really surprise me. They don't just look bad, they look terrible, and at this point in the season, they don't deserve a playoff berth. I'm really just hoping McCarthy and the Cowboys take this bye week seriously, but at this point, as a Dallas Cowboy fan, I'm kind of used to disappointment. The craziest part is this year in the Cowboys cycle, we don't even have the good start where we believe this year's our year. We're just starting out terribly. So let me know in the comment section down below if you're a Cowboy fan how you feel about us. Aside from that, multiple trades went on over the past week, and for some reason the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to screw Justin Fields. I have multiple videos in the end screen for you guys to check out after this, and I'll meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.